You're listening to Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick in association with Wexford Insurances. Challenge us at Wexford Insurances 0818 31 30 30.
I'm now joined in studio by Alan Maher of Maher Consulting. Alan, how was business for you in 2012?
Sure, it had its ups and downs like everybody else, I'm sure, Karl. Early part of the year, the first kind of 4 or 5 months were very good. Little bit of a drop off in the middle of the year, and then kind of the year has finished strongly. So I suppose overall happy enough, but it's had its challenges and ups and downs. But look, I think that's par for the course for everybody now at this stage, really.
And what was the mix of business for yourself this year?
Well, my business provides training and consultancy services in a number of areas. Firstly, I would do training in business startup. I would provide the Start Your Own Business course in Enniscorthy for Wexford County Enterprise Board. I would also do some business mentoring for Wexford County Enterprise Board. I would also have my own private clients, and I would also do some mentoring and training for Wexford Local Development. So that would be the business area. And then I also provide CV preparation and interview skills then for clients, both in group training and also in kind of one-to-one individual sessions.
In relation to the mentoring, what are the big challenges facing businesses from your experience across the country?
Well, you know, it's very strange that it's really often the most simple, basic stuff. I suppose people have been under so much pressure over the last number of years that they're so busy working in the business that they haven't taken the time to work on the business. And I know that sounds maybe like one of those cliched lines, but it really is the truth. When you're a business owner and maybe having to cut back on staff numbers, you find yourself maybe working a lot more on day-to-day issues. And if you're maybe working on the day-to-day issues, it's not giving you the time or the headspace to maybe step back and to analyse the bigger picture for businesses. What's our goals? Where do we need to go? What are the trends in the market? What's happening? And kind of look into the future a little bit. So I think people really, some of the mentoring that I've been doing over the last while, you're really kind of just sitting down with people, and instead of giving advice, you're just asking them questions, pertinent questions, to allow them to kind of say themselves what's in their own minds, because very often people have their ideas kind of straight in their own minds, and they just maybe either need a little bit of confidence or they need to say it out loud to see kind of how does it sound when you say it to somebody else, and maybe to gently guide somebody and to press maybe on issues where you feel there are some gaps.
Alan, you joined me on the show a number of months ago to discuss the entire area of customer service.
Yes.
What amazes me in business is that no matter what business owner you ask the question of in relation to what their uniqueness is in business, they'll all say customer service. Number one, is that correct? And number two, do you think that they can actually afford to say that and it is true?
I think, if I was to be very honest with you, Karl, if everybody's unique selling point out there was customer service, the level of service would be a lot better than what they are. And again, I think I remember mentioning to you on the last time I was on the show with you that, you know, research would say that customer service levels are worse now than they were 20 years ago. So I suppose it's an easy thing to say sometimes that, you know, we're really good for customer service. It's not necessarily as easy to achieve. It needs a lot of work and effort and time. And I really think it can be a unique selling point for any business, but I think it needs leadership and it needs focus and it needs drive from the top in any business, and that has to be more than just a tagline. It has to be actual on the ground work and a culture that you develop within a business, you know. So it's easy maybe to make the slogan, but it takes a little bit more than that to make it real.
Okay, so for instance, if a business owner this morning listening to the show wanted to take that seriously, what would be the process involved in making that happen?
Well, the process, as I would see it, or if I was kind of to look at it, the first thing I'd always like to do is, a mystery shopper visit to see what's the reality, because sometimes the gap between reality and the perception of what the reality is actually different. I was looking at a survey recently where 80% of businesses felt that they offered an excellent level of service to customers, but when they went and surveyed the customers, they said that only about 8% of the customers felt they were getting what they would call an excellent level of service. So sometimes the gap between what we think we do and what we actually do can be big. So we've got to look at where the reality is and then start from there. So you kind of look at what the existing service levels are, look at where the issues exist, and then start to address those issues one by one.
I know an awful lot of the work you do in addition to the training and mentoring is in the area of interview skills and CV preparation. Unemployment is something that has affected every family across County Wexford over the last number of years. Are you finding an increase in the take-up for that service, and what's leading people to you and not, let's say, to the likes of FOSS or their local jobs club?
Well, first of all, yes, this year now for me it would have been, a fairly significant part of my business. Individual clients coming looking to have CVs done up and to have a professional CV, and I suppose to sharpen up with interview skills. So yes, for me it's been a very significant part of this year. I suppose why people come to me rather than maybe other facilities that would provide those type of services, that mine is based on time. I can spend time with people. Lots of the jobs clubs and the various providers in that regard are under so much pressure. There's so many people going in and taking up those services. Very hard to have the type of time I might put into a client in those kind of services. So I suppose I'd also like to think that I'm good at what I do, Karl, and that hopefully drives business. It's the same business principle for any of us. To try and be the best you can be at whatever it is that you do. To try and excel in whatever you do. So I like to feel that I try to give a good service to my customers. I suppose you can't talk about it yourself and then not do it, Yeah,
lots of people have certainly issues in relation to and confidence issues in relation to interviews. It's something that's abstract for most people. They've only had the opportunity of maybe once or twice going through it before. What advice would you give to them today?
Preparation, Karl. It's very important that you prepare properly. You need to know everything from the basics of dates and times and when you've worked and where you've worked, but also in terms of the duties and responsibilities that you've had in various jobs. Very often I'd meet somebody, you may be meeting them in the evening after work or whatever, and I'd say to them, "Are you busy today?" And they'd say, "Yes, I was flat out for the day." And you say to them, "Well, what were you doing?" And they find it very hard to kind of define or tell you the kind of skills, duties and responsibilities that they perform on a daily basis. So it's very important that you look at everything that you do and be able to break down your current work or skill set, your own personal skills. And you really mentioned a key word there, Karl, which was confidence. That's the real heart of it. And not overconfidence, not arrogance, but just a kind of, I suppose, a comfort in your own skin kind of thing, that you're able to sit there and kind of say, well, look, if you hire me, these are some of the qualities that I feel I can bring to your organisation. And people feel that's a really difficult thing to do, and sometimes that's what you just have to practice with people. Just get them used to saying reasonably positive things about themselves, but to say it you have to know it, and sometimes that's where the real challenge. People don't know what they have to offer, so you have to work with people to kind of help them to realise, well, here are my skills, I'm punctual, I'm reliable, I'm hard working, I'm a team player, and kind of say those things and actually mean them. And I suppose then more importantly even is to have examples, be able to give examples from the real life experiences of where you're proving yourself to be a team player. There's a style of interview out there at the moment called competency based interviews, used widely throughout the civil service, but filtering into all kinds of jobs. And it's where people look for examples of where you've shown particular skills or competencies. So, they're not an easy question to tackle unless you've really prepared for them and thought about the issues involved, So preparation is the key, Karl.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of those points, Alan. In my role here in South East Radio, I've been asked to talk to a number of unemployed groups over the course of the last 12 months. And the one piece of advice that I've always given out is, you're unemployed, but treat that as your job. And your job is to find a job. So get up every morning at 7:30, 8 o'clock, leave the house at 8:30, and spend your day out there searching for a job. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, to a great degree. I think, it's funny. I was talking to somebody last week on a training course, and we were just talking about, if you have been unemployed or in the family home for a number of months or years, maybe through no fault of your own, through the current economic conditions, you can still use that if you've done work in your house, if you've given yourself a routine, maybe if you've done some training, if you've gotten out there and shown yourself to be proactive in some way, let it be, just even a couple of days a week to do something like that. But I think routine and getting up and getting out there is very, very good for your own kind of mind and your own kind of routine and keeping yourself kind of disciplined to a certain degree. I know it can be a very difficult thing to do, get up every day and get out there, particularly if there's no opportunities and you're getting knocked back, and it can be very kind of frustrating, but I think you just have to keep going. Temporary failure is not permanent defeat.
Absolutely, and I suppose, in fairness to an awful lot of those that are unemployed out there, they would have a situation whereby they have sent out, as you say, an awful lot of CVs, and because they haven't got any feedback in relation to it, they're losing energy and losing motivation in relation to that. Give me your top tip in relation to how to keep motivation levels up.
Well, I suppose just to go back a little step on it, just sending out a CV on its own, either through an email or in post, has probably a less than 1 in 20 chance of getting a result. So this is where, going back to your last point about getting out there, really if you can get out and personally deliver something and get out and meet people and talk to people, just emailing or sending a CV on spec is not really a very good kind of tool to use, because it will sap your motivation. So get out and either make a follow-up call, call personally into a business yourself if you feel there may be opportunities there. But, get out there, meet people, talk to people, stay up for it. The famous story of KFC and Colonel Saunders, I think was the man's name. He went to 1,000 places before he got somebody who was prepared to take on his recipe and use it in a kind of a fairly large scale way. So again, a couple of no's, yeah, you may get them, but keep going. We very often give up just before we become successful.
I think one of the reasons that people do hide behind sending out the CV and hoping, I suppose, they're sending out as many CVs as they can and praying for a response. For those that wouldn't have the confidence to go out there or wouldn't know what to say to an employer if they get to their front door, maybe give me some insights in relation to what they should be saying.
Well, you kind of have to try to build your confidence. You get there, you get to the door. And again, it's a really good question, Karl, because it's not something that you can kind of give a very formulaic answer to, because I think you have to look at every individual and try to, from my point of view anyway, it's really about kind of giving yourself confidence. Look at what you can do, what you have achieved, rather than what you haven't done, or the fact that maybe you have been unemployed for the last while. You kind of have to look at, well, what have you done in your time working? What do you have to offer? And I think you've got to be very, very kind of self-aware. Emotional intelligence, I suppose, is the kind of fancy word for it, but it's just being self-aware, being in touch with yourself, knowing what you have to offer, knowing your skill set, knowing your competencies. Talk to people, get insight, talk to a friend or a colleague who knows you well and who can offer you some fresh insights into what you're capable of and your skills and your qualities. Kind of going door to door and selling yourself, you kind of have to be confident. If you're not in some way a little bit confident of what you can do, and even just being a nice person, Karl, it can just, it's human nature. Appealing to somebody just as being a nice person is very often a good motivational start for a potential employee. Will this person fit into our organisation? So I think, to be yourself, to put your best foot forward, to have a little bit of faith in yourself and just stick with it, just keep with it. Don't get kind of knocked back by too many no's if you're getting no's, but just stick with it and make sure what you present looks professional, make sure you're dressed properly, and make sure you look to business, you're clean and tidy, etc., etc. First impressions are important. So how you walk through the door kind of is maybe an introduction point for a potential employer,
Well, Alan, that's some very good advice. Thank you for that. Finally, before we finish up, I'd like to ask you about your outlook for 2013. Well,
I would feel probably a little more confident going into 2013, or I feel that people should be a little more confident maybe going into 2013. As I said to you earlier, unemployment levels seem to have tapered off a little bit in recent months, so the CSO figures would say. Some good jobs announcements made already and a few more coming down the pipeline. So hopefully, 2013 will maybe see those long-awaited green shoots actually starting to sprout, rather than just being a terrible phrase that's being thrown around or used for political purposes, and that it might actually become a reality in 2013. I think here locally in Wexford, the job announcements over the last week or two have been very positive, and can only bring plenty of opportunities for people, and hopefully it won't just stop at the announcement that was made, that the other ones in the pipeline will actually come true for people. In terms of business, just to people keep focusing on what you do, to be effective rather than efficient. And people have to say, well, what's the difference? And my own kind of simple definition on it is efficient is doing things right, but effective is when you're doing the right thing. And I suppose to say to people in business to make sure that you're spending your time where it's most valuable, working on the things that really matter in your business, and kind of maybe having a little plan for the year ahead, like set some goals and see how the year pans out. And something that's written down is much more likely to happen than something that's not.
Well, Alan, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for coming in and speaking to us this morning, and wish you every success for 2013.
You're listening to Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick in association with Wexford Insurances. Think Wexford Insurances for your business insurance.